Amusement, if released from every restraint, would not only be the antithesis of art, but its extreme role. The Mark Twain absurdity with which the American culture industry flirts at times might be a corrective of art. The more seriously the latter regards the incompatibility with life, the more it resembles the seriousness of life, its antithesis. The more effort it devotes to developing wholly from its own formal law, the more effort it demands from the intelligence to neutralize its burden. In some revue films, and especially in the grotesque and the funnies, the possibility of this negation does glimmer for a few moments, but of course it cannot happen. Pure amusement in its consequence, relaxed surrender to all kinds of associations and happy nonsense, is cut short by the amusement on the market. Instead, it is interrupted by a surrogate overall meaning which the culture industry insists on giving to its products, and yet misuses as a mere pretext for bringing in the stars. Biographies and other simple stories patch the fragments of nonsense into an idiotic plot. We do not have the cap and bells of the jester, but the bunch of keys of capitalist reason, which even screens the pleasure of achieving success. Every kiss in the revue film has to contribute to the career of the boxer, or some hit song expert, or other whose rise to fame is being glorified. The deception is not that the culture industry supplies amusement, but that it ruins the fun by allowing business considerations to involve it in the ideological cliches of a culture in the process of self-liquidation. Ethics and taste cut short unrestrained amusement as naive. Naivete is thought to be as bad as intellectualism, and even restrict technical possibilities. The culture industry is corrupt, not because it is a sinful Babylon, but because it is a cathedral dedicated to elevated pleasure. On all levels, from Hemingway to Emil Ludwig, from Mrs. Miniver to the Lone Ranger, from Toscanini to Guy Lombardo, there is untruth in the intellectual content taken ready-made from art and science. The culture industry does retain a trace of something better in those features which bring it close to the circus, in the self-justifying and nonsensical skill of writers, acrobats, and clowns, in the defense and justification of physical and against intellectual art. But the refugees of a mindless artistry, which represents what is human as opposed to the social mechanism, are being relentlessly hunted down by a schematic reason, which compels everything to prove its significance and effect. The consequence is that the nonsensical at the bottom disappears as utterly as the sense in works of art at the top. The fusion of culture and entertainment that is taking place today leads not only to a deprivation of culture, but inevitably to an intellectualization of amusement. This is evident from the fact that only the copy appears. In the movie theater, the photograph, on the radio, the recording. In the age of liberal expansion, amusement lived on the unshaken belief in the future. Things would remain as they were, and even improve. Today, this belief is once more intellectualized. It becomes so faint that it loses sight of any goal, and is little more than a magic lantern show for those with their backs to reality. It consists of the meaningful emphases which, parallel to life itself, the screenplay puts on the smart fellow, the engineer, the capable girl, ruthlessness disguised as character, interest, the sport, and finally automobiles and cigarettes, even where the entertainment is not put down to the advertising account of the immediate producers, but to that of the system as a whole. Amusement itself becomes an ideal, taking the place of the higher things of which it completely deprives the masses by repeating them in a manner even more stereotyped than the slogans paid for by advertising interests. Inwardness, the subjectively restricted form of truth, was always more at the mercy of the outwardly powerful than they imagined. The culture industry turns it into an open lie. It has now become mere twaddle which is acceptable in religious bestsellers, psychological films, and women's serials as an embarrassingly agreeable garnish, so that genuine personal emotion in real life can be all the more reliably controlled. In this sense, amusement carries out that purgation of the emotions which Aristotle once attributed to tragedy, and Mortimer Adler now allows to movies. The culture industry reveals the truth about catharsis as it did about style.